Our top focus today, the world will be watching as the G7 summit gets underway tomorrow, and WION World is of course, bringing you all the live updates and the action. But as of now, US President Joe Biden and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson are meeting as we speak. These are live visuals coming from Cornwall in the United Kingdom, where the two leaders have met recently. This is the first meeting face-to-face at the G7 summit, and both the leaders are expected to bolster their quote-unquote special relationship. Once again, these are live visuals coming of US President Joe Biden and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson meeting in Cornwall in the United Kingdom, along with the First Lady as well as... Once again, these are live visuals coming in from Cornwall in the United Kingdom, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson and US President Joe Biden are meeting face-to-face ahead of the G7 summit tomorrow. This meeting is expected to bolster their quote-unquote special relationship. And for now, let's go straight to our correspondents who are joining us from the UK as of now. Ollie Barrett is bringing us all the action from the G7, ahead of the G7, of course, from Cornwall. And also joining us on this broadcast is Mandy from London, Mandy Clark, our London Bureau Chief. Let's begin with you, Ollie. You are, of course, in the midst of all the action in Cornwall. So let's start the discussion with you. Tell us, Biden and Johnson have just met. What's on the agenda of the day, and how will this meeting affect the UK-US ties going forward?
Yeah, that meeting getting underway now. It's something that Boris Johnson was very keen to secure. The first foreign trip by Joe Biden since he became US president. They have a lot to discuss. Joe Biden comes into this meeting having been warning the UK government about protecting the peace process in Northern Ireland after having left the European Union. That will certainly be high on the agenda, and Boris Johnson will want to put across the UK's side of the story before European Union leaders arrive here in Cornwall and get their turn to bend the president's ear on that matter. But lots of other issues too. We know that the two men are going to sign a new Atlantic Charter to commit the United States and the United Kingdom to cooperation between the two countries in future on things like security, defence and climate change. Climate change is a key topic ahead of the COP26 summit in Glasgow here in the UK later in the year, also hosted by Britain. And Boris Johnson sees that as an area that these two men can really cooperate on and show global leadership on. We should say there are climate protesters here in Cornwall as these meetings unfold who think actually the G7 is all words and very little action when it comes to climate change, and then recovery from the pandemic, but also dealing with the current coronavirus situation that parts of the world find themselves in at the moment. We expect that over the course of the coming days, the G7 leaders will be encouraged by Boris Johnson and Joe Biden to commit many hundreds of millions of vaccine doses to parts of the developing world that cannot at the moment get their hands on as many doses as they would like.
Right. Now, Ollie, there are some concerns also ahead of this G7 meeting, especially after Biden's views on Brexit and, of course, the Northern Ireland issue. So elaborate on that, please.
Yes, Joe Biden has warned heading into these discussions, and his administration has been in touch with London on this, that they want to see the UK standing up for the Northern Ireland Protocol that was agreed as part of the Brexit deal between the European Union and the UK after Britain left the bloc. The UK feels that the way the EU is currently interpreting the Northern Ireland Protocol is too purist, is too bureaucratic, is too literal, and is causing disruption that is unnecessary in Northern Ireland and in Ireland, and it says that is causing problems for the peace process down the road. The European Union sees this a very different way. It says that the UK is not implementing the deal that it signed up for. It says the UK is the one that could potentially be putting the peace process at risk, and both sides say that the peace process in Northern Ireland is their number one priority. Well, that's exactly what Joe Biden says too coming into these talks. So as I say, Boris Johnson will want to put the UK's side of the story to Joe Biden ahead of the other European leaders arriving for this summit. He'll want to make the point that the UK government believes that actually it sees eye to eye with Washington on this, and he'll hope that Joe Biden won't just be coming out of the G7 warning Britain to take great care when it comes to Northern Ireland. He will hope that Joe Biden also comes out of this summit encouraging the European Union to compromise as well.
Right. Ollie, my final question for you before we go across to New York for another perspective, very quickly. Tell us a little bit about the upcoming meeting between Biden and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. We've heard a very assertive Biden say that he aims to show Putin that Europe and the US are tight. What are your views on the same?
Yeah, that will take place next week after the G7 is done and dusted, then after Joe Biden has travelled to Windsor Castle to meet the Queen on Sunday, then after NATO on Monday in Brussels, which the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will also travel to attend as well. So it's after all of that that the Biden-Putin meeting takes place in Switzerland. Joe Biden landing on UK soil yesterday, Wednesday night UK time, and saying when he did so that he wants to meet Vladimir Putin and tell him what he wants him to know, and saying that the United States is going to take a firm stance when it comes to Russia. But we've also heard from Washington that they do want to have a cooperative relationship with Russia if that is indeed possible. So all eyes will be on that sit down between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin to look at their body language, but also to see what, if anything, comes out of those talks, because international leader after international leader has sat down with Vladimir Putin saying they're going to talk tough and saying they want to have a different type of relationship with Russia. Most of them haven't got much in return.
Right. Ollie, thank you so much for all those inputs. We'll, of course, come back to you for more updates once the G7 gets underway in scenic Cornwall, as we can see from the visuals. And now from Cornwall in the UK, let's go across to New York, from where our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live. Susan, tell us about the expectations of the US from the UK, especially after Brexit and the damage done by the pandemic. What will be on top of the agenda for Biden and Johnson?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the White House has on the surface been very clear on what it hopes to accomplish during these negotiations. And as you know, we've mentioned that it's going to be COVID, climate change. It's going to be a lot about Brexit and Northern Ireland. And the White House and the Biden administration has made very clear that while they're not in the negotiations directly with the European Union and the UK regarding Northern Ireland. However, President Biden is personally invested in finding peace and for the peace deal regarding Northern Ireland not to be jeopardized, considering the fact that he's mentioned he is a proud Irish Catholic, nor does he want to be directly involved in these negotiations. He doesn't want to get the United States involved in that, but he is going to press Boris Johnson on that. But another very notable feature of these discussions that we have to look into is whether or not this will set the tone and a new tone, and is it going to set some kind of agenda for the next 3.5 years at least, in a special relationship between the United States and the UK, considering the fact that Joe Biden is a very different president from Donald Trump, or it's not going to be transformative and it's going to basically go to the status quo that was pre-Donald Trump. So maybe we won't get any answers during this first encounter, but that is something that a lot of people are looking to, and how this is going to be cemented, considering the fact that there's already talk that, Trump or one of his allies are going to step in 2024. So not only the Europeans, but Boris Johnson is also going to be taking into consideration for how long the UK will have to deal with a figure like Joe Biden in the White House. But on the surface, the United States, and especially Joe Biden, this is his safe zone of being a diplomat, dealing with diplomacy, and they're going to be very cordial.
Right, Susan, let's talk about the agenda of this G7, which is unlike any other. There are multiple issues to be discussed. The pandemic, of course, is likely to dominate the agenda, along with the talk of vaccines. We just heard that the US plans to donate some 500 million Pfizer shots to different countries, poorer countries, as well as the African Union. And the topic of Russia and China is also likely to come up. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the United States has a lot at stake when it comes to Russia and China. It's no surprise that this G7 summit is really happening right before U.S. President Joe Biden goes to meet with Vladimir Putin. He wants to see his allies united when he goes and delivers his message to the Russian president. But also regarding China, remember before he embarked on this 8-day visit to Europe, he signed an executive order regarding data, sensitive data of Americans, regarding America's adversaries, and that was targeted towards China. But there's one issue here, and that's the issue that China poses a greater threat to the United States than it does in part to Europe, because China is a huge trade partner to Europe. And although Europe understands the issues and the dangers that China does pose to Western democracies and to the West, Biden will really have to push through on a lot of these trade measures regarding China. Regarding Russia, we'll see how the discussions go with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, considering the fact that there was the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, but Russia will probably be a more focal.
Right. Right. Susan, we are, of course, getting live visuals right now that the US President and the UK Prime Minister are meeting, and they're likely to hold a press briefing shortly, and we'll be cutting across to that soon. For now, let's talk about President Biden's views on the Northern Ireland issue. He's been pretty vocal about it, as well as Brexit and its impact on peace in Northern Ireland. Tell us more about that.
President Biden basically, the White House, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, told reporters that he has mentioned the issue. He opposed Brexit, first of all. So this meeting, he goes into this meeting with Boris Johnson, and both men know that he wasn't a big fan of Brexit. He's concerned about Northern Ireland because he was a supporter, as Boris Johnson was, about the peace deal and the peace process made between the UK and Northern Ireland, which was called the Good Friday deal. So he's concerned about peace in that region, Brexit, and relationships with the EU, which the UK says it has no problems. But at the end of the day, the United States can't really get involved wholeheartedly into these negotiations, and the EU and the UK will have to deal with the issue of Northern Ireland amongst themselves. But Joe Biden has mentioned very clearly that this is a personal issue for him. He has Irish roots. He's made clear that he's a proud Irish Catholic, and he's really going to press Boris Johnson on this issue because it ultimately also ties to the issue of Brexit, which, the Biden administration and the Democrats generally here in the United States weren't very supportive of from the beginning. So there's going to be some tension and some discussions around that issue. But again, the White House has mentioned the tone will not be confrontational. It will not be sort of a demand, which at the end of the day, the United States can't make, but it really will be a request and a firm discussion, a firm request, if you may, on the part of Joe Biden to Boris Johnson. And we'll see how that plays out. But that is something that will hover and really take over this meeting as it's underway right now. We'll see what happens we'll really understand how the meeting went from the posture and the tone of the press conference. Yeah.
Moving away from the G7, let's talk about another anticipated meeting, which is, of course, between the US President and the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. People are saying expectations are low as tensions have been high between the two sides. What are the US experts saying? What do they expect from that meeting?
So, the bar has been set very low, and maybe perhaps that's a good thing, considering the fact that Usually first meetings between countries like the United States and Russia are more symbolic, but there is a lot of attention considering the fact that Joe Biden's rhetoric has been very different from that of Donald Trump's. And although here in the media, notably among the Democrats, for some odd reason, Donald Trump was perceived as being, friendly towards Russia because his rhetoric wasn't as harsh as Joe Biden's. He actually was very tough on Russia with sanctions and providing military aid to Ukraine and NATO and sending troops to Syria to counter Russia. Those were, his policies. And now we have Joe Biden with a stronger rhetoric. And so Americans are watching to see whether or not, Joe Biden will be able to match that rhetoric in his discussions with Vladimir Putin, considering the fact that intelligence officials here believe that to the lead up to this discussion, Russia has been hard hitting the United States with one cyber attack and ransomware on huge companies here in the United States after the others, essentially sending a signal that this is what we can do to you if we want to, albeit the Russian government has denied it has had any hand in this, but U.S. intelligence officials say that it's absolutely impossible for such huge incidents of ransomware and cyber attack to happen without a go-ahead from the top. So that's where they stand. Americans are watching to see how this president will match rhetoric with policy, how his tone will set the next 3.5 years of the Biden administration's approach towards Russia, and how Vladimir Putin will react to Biden's stance and demeanor moving forward.
Right. Susan, my final question as we wrap up this discussion. We're getting visuals of great camaraderie between the two leaders. In fact, we're seeing Biden patting Johnson on the shoulder. It's very unlike his predecessor, Donald Trump, who alienated a lot of his European allies. How do you see this trip transforming the relationships between the US and UK in particular?
Well, regarding Johnson, I think that Johnson in particular, I think Donald Trump and Boris Johnson really enjoyed a camaraderie that at least Barack Obama really didn't share with Johnson, considering the fact that both leaders were considered this sort of populist leader with a populist agenda, both pro-Brexit and so on. But you can't undermine that the United States and Britain ultimately, at least out in the open, share this so-called special relationship, and they will ultimately have each other's back, no pun intended, regarding that pat on the back. But I think once these malign issues are resolved, we are going to see the two countries move forward and work together, because that ultimately is the only way to move forward, because of the threat that both face from Russia, from China, and this global pandemic. And the UK will have to rely on the US if it really wants vaccination for all, which it will call for in the G7 summit. And the Biden administration really needs the UK as well in a lot of issues regarding security, shared intelligence, and again, countering the big adversaries against Western democracies. So we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting.
Right. I just wanted to get your input on some of the strategies that the UK and US will be employing to tackle the pandemic. Now, we know that the US plans to donate some 500 million Pfizer vaccines. Will we also hear of similar calls from the UK? And how will this affect their pandemic strategies going forward?
Well, I think it's extremely welcomed, considering the fact that there are millions around the world who still haven't received the vaccine. You have patent issues that American companies are not willing to give up. And then you have countries like the UK who are really pushing forward with that. And Boris Johnson has really made it his mission for a vaccine for all initiative. And so I think the United States felt the need to step up, considering the fact that Joe Biden and his administration were not only facing criticism around the world, but they were also starting to face criticism here at home. And that's very important for this administration right now, being 17 months away from a midterm. So everything that the Biden administration does regarding vaccine distribution obviously is in the right direction, considering the global pandemic, but it's also being considered from a domestic perspective in an election year as well. We have to take that into consideration as well, which is ultimately a good thing, but they also view it as how the American public will view its sort of gesture as well.
Right. And now, Susan, tell us a little bit, our viewers in specific, about this Atlantic Charter or the new pact that is likely to come up on the agenda as the two leaders meet right now.
Yeah, so this is a nod basically to a pact made between Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1941 after the Second World War, which sort of opened the gate for a new transatlantic relationship. And now this new transatlantic partnership, sort of this new era of relationship of America is back, is going to focus on COVID recovery. It's going to focus on new trade and security deals, and it's also going to focus on climate, which is really a throbbing issue, not only for the UK, but for the United States as well. So they're sort of playing on that. And I think this was really welcomed by the UK, considering the fact that 10 Downing Street said that Boris Johnson didn't like the term special relationship, although he didn't mean that he doesn't like the relationship enjoyed between the UK and the US, but he didn't like the fact that it was the term special relationship that Biden continuously kept using on the phone, because it seemed that the UK is needy and is in a lesser position. And so he really welcomed this Atlantic Charter because it sort of put the two countries at equal footing, and it sort of paved the way for an equal opportunity to move forward and put requests regarding climate and COVID and other issues as well. So it's welcomed by both sides. They both read the Atlantic Charter before meeting, and it's going to be on full display at the G7 summit as well when the world leaders meet.
Right, Susan Tehrani from New York, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast and all the latest updates on the upcoming summit. We'll, of course, come back to you for more updates when the summit gets underway. The G7 gets underway tomorrow in the scenic location of Cornwall in the United Kingdom, and WION World is One will continue to bring you all the action from Cornwall. For now, it's a wrap on this bulletin. Thanks for watching with me, Priyanka Sharma. Stay tuned. Global News continues on the other side.